Lick's adventure in Pharynga. Let's see now, which of these worlds could Ryung have gone to, said Lick's the axolotl kaiju, musing aloud over the paper in her hands. It had been left behind by her friend Ryung, the giant human woman, before her disappearance, and was the only real lead she'd left behind that Lick's might use to find her. On it, she had written a list of planets that were all victim to either some sort of environmental disaster, or to social injustices that Ryung had meant to address. Lick's had already visited a couple of those planets looking for her friend, but had found no sign of her yet. Even so, she was far from losing hope, seeing as she still had most of the list to go over. But without any information about the planets other than their names and coordinates, it was hard to guess which, if any, Ryung might be at. She might as well pick one at random. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, Lick sang, sliding her finger down the list of names with each beat until the rhyme came to an end with her finger pointing to one planet in particular. Pharynga A. Sounds like it could be a fun place, Lick said cheerfully, raising her left arm in front of her and pressing a button on its wristband. A menu was projected onto the air over her wristband, and after tapping through some options, she was able to enter the coordinates Ryung had written down for that planet. Finally she tapped the retravel button, and after a brief pause, her bracelet opened up a portal to this new planet in front of her. Look out, Pharynga, here comes Lick's, she exclaimed as she jumped through the portal. When she came through the other side, she yelped in alarm as she failed to find the solid ground she had been expecting, instead falling right into a body of water. Blinking in surprise, she looked around, taking in her surroundings at leisure while breathing through her gills. In the water with her were a bunch of aquatic creatures, the largest of them being about the length of her forearm while the smallest were so tiny she could barely see them as tiny little colorful blips. They were all swimming away from her, no doubt startled by her big splash. Sorry for the scare, guys, she said, waving at them while they kept swimming away. I wonder why Ryung had this planet on her list. This ocean feels pretty clean and I can't see any garbage, so it's probably not pollution. The animals look pretty healthy, too. Maybe it's because of something happening on the surface? Looking to her right, she saw the seafloor rising steadily until it met the water's surface and gave way to dry land. With powerful strokes of her arms and tail, she quickly swam over to the shore, very eager to see what sort of place she had arrived at. Would she see huge swamps or forests, or maybe great green fields? Would there be creatures her size, or would they all be tiny, like the ones at the last planet she had visited? Would Ryung be there? Would there be sentient beings? She was so excited to find out what kind of world this was, but as she stepped onto the beach, shaking her head free of ocean water, she blinked her eyes open and saw nothing. Well, not exactly nothing. To be precise, she saw sand, and a great deal of it, stretching out as far as she could see. An endless, barren desert, devoid of any notable features or visible signs of life. A more dreadful place could hardly be imagined. Of all those planets I just had to pick this one, Lick sighed, shaking her head in disappointment. Well, let's get this over with so I can go somewhere nicer. She stepped out of the water and frowned more deeply as she felt the hot sand under her feet. It wasn't so hot as to be painful, but it was still uncomfortable for her. For that matter, the dry desert air wasn't doing her any favors. As an amphibian, there were few things she liked less than being dry. She could put up with it as long as it didn't get much hotter, but if it did, she would have to leave immediately, Ryung or no Ryung. As she walked, she looked over the sand to see if there were any footprints there, but didn't see anything of the sort. Over time, though, she did notice something interesting off in the distance. It was a small column of smoke rising up from behind a sand dune, darkening the air above its source. That smoke might just be the first sign of sentient life she'd seen on this planet, assuming it wasn't just a wildfire of some sort, and really the only notable feature anywhere in this barren land. Ryung? Lix called as she walked towards it, just in case her friend was there to hear her. Ryung, is that you? It's me. Lix. Hello? Ryung? She reached the sand dune after a bit of walking, and painstakingly made her way up it, grunting as she came close to stumbling on the sand. Over on the other side, she saw the loose sand give way to more solid ground, making walking easier if nothing else. More importantly, now she could see the source of the smoke, which seemed to be coming from the ground itself. Weird, she thought as she made her way over to it. While she was walking, she suddenly felt what she thought was some sort of sand structure crumbling under her foot. She didn't pay it much attention, being much more interested in the source of this mysterious smoke, but she found the sensation very pleasant, and the feeling of those little whatever they were crumbling under her feet made her crack a smile. What she didn't know, and didn't even suspect, was that these sand structures were the sandstone buildings of the planet's little inhabitants, the Pharyngans. To these little people, the unsuspecting axolotl seemed a terrible purple monster crushing dozens of their homes and buildings with each thundering step. When she had first emerged from behind the dune, the Pharyngans had looked in disbelief at this gargantuan creature completely unlike anything they had ever seen before. When she started coming towards them, though, they flew into a panic, running to flee or to hide depending on which they felt was safer. The closer the giant monster came, the more they could feel the earth shaking with her footsteps, a powerful rumbling that instilled dread in the hearts of every person in town. Then, finally, she reached the city and her massive foot rose overhead, its shadow falling over multiple city blocks. Those who found themselves under her soul either braced for impact or made one last desperate dash to escape before the huge foot fell on them. Their sandstone structures easily crumbled under the monster's foot, being flattened and reduced to rubble under her gargantuan weight before disappearing beneath her. Those who stood nearby looked on in fear and trembling at the sheer size of that foot. So great was this monster that not only had she annihilated all those buildings and people with a single step, but it looked like she hadn't even realized it. Her toes, 4 on each foot, were more than twice as tall as the Pharyngans, and even their largest buildings, which admittedly were only a modest 5 stories tall, didn't even reach her ankles. Before a creature such as this, they were completely defenseless. All they could do was try to stay safe and hope that she would pass through without too much destruction. The little people's contemplation of Lix's foot was interrupted as her other foot swung overhead. Swinging right by her other foot, its passage gave rise to air currents so powerful that they blew away several people, sending them tumbling along the streets for a block or two. The foot came down with another great impact, then the first foot rose again and swung away, the debris of dozens of crushed buildings falling from the giant's soul and leaving even more havoc and destruction in her wake. So huge was the monster that few of those who had started trying to move out of her way after her first step into the city were able to do it in time, so most of them still found themselves victims to her feet. Flattened against the ground, they at first struggled a bit before being driven ever deeper into her skin, until they couldn't move at all. Amidst the shock of having been stepped on by this giant monster, it took them a bit to realize that they were miraculously still alive. They hadn't even been hurt, in fact. It was as if some force was protecting them from the huge monster, even as her immeasurable weight pressed down on them and left them smothered under her foot. And, indeed, that's what was happening. As one of the larger species in the galaxy at over 600 feet tall, Lix knew that she was prone to causing accidental damage, And so she had installed a program into her bracelet that created a protective skin-tight force field around any smaller creatures in her proximity, keeping them all safe from the accidental, or not so accidental, stomp. But none of the Pharyngans knew this, and so when they saw her stepping on other people, they assumed the worst and ran away in fear, never stopping to notice the handful of people who slowly got up from her footprint afterwards. Of all this, Lix remained blissfully ignorant. She simply hummed to herself as she went, never thinking to pay closer attention to the little bugs scurrying around on the floor. After a little while, she finally arrived at the column of smoke slowly drifting upwards from the ground. She got down for a closer look, then blew the smoke out of the way so she could see better. It turned out that the smoke wasn't coming from the ground exactly, but instead from a bunch of tiny little buildings that seemed to make up some sort of industrial complex. What's more, between them she saw a bunch of tiny people running to hide or flee. They were very small, among the smaller sentient beings she'd found in her travels. In their appearance they reminded her the most of humans, having very similar faces and bodies, though their skin was gray and their ears almost completely flat. Also, they weren't even half as tall as humans. They must have been only 2 feet tall, 2.5 at most. Moving her hand closer and following some of the tiny Pharyngans with her finger, she judged that she could fit at least 10 of them under her fingertip. While examining the little people, Lix had a thought and turned around. Noticing for the first time that the structures she had been stepping on, which had felt so good under her feet, were all buildings like the little factories she'd been stepping on, and that the insects she'd been seeing out of the corner of her eye were the same little people coming out of these factories. Whoops, Lix said, feeling guilty for a moment before her more mischievous side took over. A big grin spread over her face as she saw the commotion the little people had been thrown into. It always made her smile to find herself the center of a whole city's attention, and this time she'd even managed it by complete accident. Lix stood to her full height, really towering over the puny people, swinging her tail behind and flaunting her size over them. She looked over her footprints, seeing how much destruction she had already caused, then noticed a slight feeling of movement under her feet. Turning one of them over, she saw that her sole was covered in Pharyngans, with as much as 100 of them plastered to soft purple skin. Some of them were trying to get off, but they were held too tight against her sole and much too weak to do anything more than squirm around. Smiling to herself, Lix lowered her foot back down, reveling in the feeling of the tiny bodies pressed tight against her soles. She wiggled her toes in delight, then turned her attention back to the people running through the streets. What to do with them, she wondered. She could simply explain to them that she wasn't here to hurt them and apologize for the destruction she'd caused. That was probably the kindest thing to do. But was it the most fun? Definitely not. Holding her hands up in a claw gesture, she said, "Roar. I'm gonna get you," and raised a foot threateningly over the Pharyngans. Her words, translated into the local language by her bracelet, got them all even more frantic to escape, running this way and that along their little streets. Scrunching her sole in anticipation, she slowly lowered her foot onto a group of people. Feeling them all squirming under her sole, she giggled and swung her other foot towards another group of people, stepping on them as well. Chasing after the Pharyngans, she slowly made her way to the other side of the city, finally reaching the end of the buildings so she wouldn't have to worry about causing any more unnecessary destruction. There she grabbed a handful of Pharyngans who had run out of the city before her, holding a few dozen of them in her closed fist before bringing them up to her face. They looked really cute from up close, so cute that she wished she could take them home to keep them as pets. One by one the Pharyngans came back to their senses and slowly sat up on Lix's hand, only to freeze up once they realized where they were. Me looked at her in terror, no doubt thinking they might die at any moment. Others looked at her with more of a look of curiosity tinged with caution. A few didn't look scared at all, perhaps sensing that they were safe with her. Well, look at all these tiny little things I caught. You've got to be some of the most adorable things I've seen. You're so adorable, in fact, that I might just eat you all up. Nom 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 nom. Lix said, pulling them all closer to her mouth, right until she heard someone crying. Lowering her hand, she saw a young boy wailing at the sight of her gaping mouth. Hey, don't cry, she said apologetically, realizing she'd gone too far with her game. It's okay, nothing's going to happen to you. You're all safe with me, I swear I would never hurt any of you. But. The kid began, wiping away his tears. Why you stepped on my mommy? No, but look. Everyone I stepped on is totally fine, see? She lowered everyone to the ground, then sat down in front of them and brought her feet over to them, wiping off everyone that had gotten stuck to her soles. They were all too dazed to stand at first, but after a while they got to their feet. Then the kid who had been weeping ran over to one of those people and pounced on her with a cry of relief. You see? Your mommy is fine. No one got hurt. My bracelet protects you all, so as long as I'm here, nothing can hurt you. Indeed, all throughout the city, people were finding that she was right, as they saw hundreds and hundreds of people who had been stepped on and driven into the giant monster's footprints, were all climbing back out as if nothing had happened. Not everyone noticed it, most didn't trust her and didn't bother to look, but bit by bit, many of those who had been running came to a stop while those who had been hidden crept out of their houses, all of them coming to look at this curious being in new light. As frightening as she had seemed before, now she seemed harmless, if a bit too playful. Seeing her in this new way, some Pharyngans even ventured to come closer to her, walking out of the city to join those who were gathered between her feet. They looked in awe at her immense figure, which they were finding out didn't look quite as monstrous as they had thought at first. She was even kind of pretty. And now that she was sitting calmly instead of chasing them through the city and crushing all their buildings. Her presence was strangely reassuring. Lix gave a friendly smile and reached out to the gathered Pharyngans at her feet, setting her hand flat on the ground in front of them, letting those who were brave enough climb on. Once they were all on her hand, she stood back up and brought them close, holding them on level with her chest. So I guess I should probably introduce myself. My name is Lix and I'm here looking for a friend. Think you guys could help me out with that? Her name is Ryung and she's about the same size as me. Although we're not the same species. She disappeared the other day, but she was planning on coming to this planet for some reason, so I came here to look for her. Have any of you seen her? The Pharyngans on her hand as well as those on the ground exchanged glances and started muttering among themselves. After a bit, they turned back to her and said that, no, they hadn't seen anyone like that. Well, Lix sighed. I didn't really expect her to be here anyways, but it was worth a shot. Thanks for the help. Also, I am, sorry about wrecking all those buildings. If there's anything I can do to make up for it, just let me know. Again the Pharyngans started consulting with each other, this time speaking with very serious looks on their faces and in hushed tones. It seemed there was something going on that they didn't quite feel comfortable sharing with her. Lix opened her mouth to ask what the problem was, but she was interrupted by something hitting her in the back and causing a powerful explosion that knocked her off balance but didn't otherwise damage her thanks to the protective force field on her. With her hand curled protectively over the Pharyngans she held, she stumbled forward a few steps before hitting the ground with a resounding thud, her body crushing hundreds of buildings and pinning thousands of people underneath. "What was that?" she exclaimed as she got back on her feet. Looking around, she saw dozens of flying machines about the size of her fists hovering over the city. They all made some sort of beeping noise, then one of them shot a couple of missiles at her. Lix held out her hands to stop it, this time managing to keep her footing when the explosion came. Going through the cloud of smoke, she reached the drone that had attacked her in a couple steps, then punched it, blowing it up and ending its remains flying miles into the distance. Lix turned around just in time to see another drone shooting at her. Sidestepping its attack, she ran up and smacked it out of the air, then did the same with a third drone that was flying nearby. Whoever or whatever was controlling the remaining drones obviously realized how much of a danger she was to them, and so they all started flying in formation around her, keeping their distance while pelting her with missiles. The lot of them remained just out of arm's reach, flying away from her whenever she got too close. But she managed to catch a couple by surprise when she whipped around and swung her tail behind her, swatting them away just like that. After that the remaining drones stayed even further away, so Lix was forced to try and shoot them out of the sky with her bracelet, taking careful aim and then pressing a button that made the device shoot out a laser beam. As good of a shot as Lix was, her enemies were so small and nimble, and there were so many of them, that it would take her several minutes to defeat them all. Being too absorbed in the fighting to watch her step at the same time, she ended up causing a great deal of panic and destruction in the city, even among those who had stopped being afraid of her a little while ago. After all, even if she was a kind person, it was still terrifying to find themselves in the middle of such a battle, with powerful missiles going and a giant creature stomping all over their city. But if things were scary for those on the ground, it was even worse for those in her hand. As they spent the whole battle being swung this way and that, sometimes very violently as when she tried to punch a drone out of the air. It was all the more frightening because they didn't have any clue what was going on outside and could only guess at it while dealing with the nausea and dizziness brought about by all this sudden movement. Finally, once all the drones had been dealt with, Lix lowered her arms and looked around the city, grimacing as she saw the sorry state that the city was in now following the battle. "What on earth were those things?" she muttered, then shook her head and brought the hand with all the Pharyngans up to her face. As the set of giant fingers uncurled from them, the Pharyngans slowly got to their feet, groaning and blinking repeatedly as their eyes slowly got used to the light. Once they could see well again, they looked up and saw the giant axolotl woman wearing a rather unsettling frown. She was plainly angry, and looked more frightening than she had even when first coming into their city. "All right," she said, her voice commanding. "I need answers. What were those things and where did they come from?" They were DRO drones, miss," one of them said, flinching as her angered eyes turned to look on him. "They come from the weapons factories." "The weapons factories?" Lix said, half closing her hand over the Pharyngans as she looked up at column of smoke rising up from the industrial area. Now I see why Ryung wanted to come here. Well, she's not here to fix this, but I'll do it for her. I know it's what she would want me to do." And so she went stomping towards the factories, filled with a growing resolve to see this whole thing through to the end, no matter what happened. Meanwhile, on the ground, thousands of frightened Pharyngans scrambled to get out of her way, running as fast as their little legs could carry them. The giant woman was laser-focused on the factories, so much so that she didn't pay attention to what she was stepping on or what further destruction she caused, though in truth, The city was so ruined from her steps and missile explosions that there weren't that many buildings left for her to destroy. Among those who were running away was a man who had previously started trusting her until the fight with the drones first erupted. Now he ran along with everyone else, trying to get away, only to trip on a piece of debris and fall rolling over the ground until he stopped on his back. Just then the giant creature's huge purple foot appeared over him, its soul covered with Pharyngans. He let out a terrified scream, only for it to be silenced as the vast soul descended on him, smothering him gently while the whole world went dark. End of Part 1, Lick's Adventures in Pharynga. The original English story was written by Idunnow. You can find the link in the description. Licks, the giant axolotl kaiju-girl, is an original character from Cormany Media. Subscribe to our channel for more stories and check out our main channel for short films starring the kind giantess Ryung. Of course, we are happy about comments and a thumbs up. Thanks for listening.